Have you ever been scrolling through your social media and just felt completely overwhelmed? You've got 1,000 friends, but it feels kind of lonely. Well, it turns out there's a very real biological reason for that feeling, and it's called Dunbar's number. It's this fascinating idea that our brains can really only handle about 150 friends. So let's get into it.
Right? Trying to keep up with hundreds or maybe even thousands of online connections can honestly feel like a full-time job. And if you feel like you're falling behind or just can't manage it all, you are definitely not alone. The thing is, this isn't a personal failure. It's just a basic feature of being human.
And the answer really boils down to this one single number, 150. And trust me, this isn't just some random number pulled out of a hat. It's a cognitive limit, a kind of social speed limit that shapes pretty much everything in our lives.
What we're really talking about here is a biological boundary on our social world. This has nothing to do with being an introvert or an extrovert or how popular you are. It's all about the wiring in our brains, the hardware we're all running on.
So officially, this is Dunbar's number. It's the cognitive limit on the number of stable, meaningful relationships we can actually maintain. Now, the key words here are stable and meaningful. This isn't about acquaintances or people you just kind of recognize. We're talking about the people you have a real ongoing connection with, where you know what's going on in their life and they know what's going on in yours.
So, where did this number even come from? Well, the story starts deep inside the brain, with a specific part that acts like our built-in social network manager.
Back in the 1990s, an anthropologist named Robin Dunbar was studying primates, and he noticed this really striking pattern. He found that the bigger a primate's neocortex, that's the wrinkly, thinking part of the brain, the larger its social group was. A bigger brain meant a bigger, more complex tribe. Simple as that.
So, naturally, Dunbar did the math for humans, and given our massive neocortex, the formula predicted a maximum group size of, you guessed it, about 150. And why? Because keeping track of relationships has a really high cognitive load. It takes a ton of mental energy to remember everyone's faces, their stories, their personalities, and how they relate to everyone else you know. It's a lot of work.
But here's where it gets even more fascinating. This group of 150 people isn't just one big messy list. Dunbar found that our social world is actually structured in layers, kind of like concentric circles, with you right at the center.
So at the very core, that tiny inner circle, you've got about 5 people. This is your support clique. These are your ride or dies, the people you'd call at 3 a.m. in the middle of a crisis, no questions asked. Okay, moving one layer out, that circle expands to about 15 people. This is your sympathy group. These are your close friends, the people you feel for deeply. You celebrate their wins like they're your own, and you genuinely hurt when they're struggling.
And if we zoom out one more ring, we hit the affinity group, which is roughly 50 people. Now these are your good friends, the people you definitely invite to a big birthday party or a weekend barbecue. The connection is totally genuine, just maybe a little more casual.
And finally, we land on that big outer boundary, your stable network of about 150 people. This is the whole shebang. It includes everyone we've already mentioned, plus all the other people you have a real social history with. You might not see them all the time, but if you ran into one at the store, you'd be genuinely happy to stop and have a real conversation. Anything beyond this number, and you're pretty much in acquaintance territory. Now, I know this might sound like a cool theory, but what makes it so powerful is how this number, 150, just keeps popping up, again and again, all throughout human history and across so many different cultures. It's almost like a law of nature. I mean, just think about it. For thousands of years, hunter-gatherer societies, they naturally hovered right around 150 people. The ancient Romans figured out that their most effective military units had about 150 soldiers. There are even modern communities like the Hutterites who will intentionally split their villages in 2 once they grow past 150, just to keep things feeling close-knit. Even businesses find that something breaks in the company culture when you get past that number. It's just everywhere. But okay, I know the question on everyone's mind, the elephant in the room. What about Facebook? What about my 1,000 followers? Hasn't modern technology finally allowed us to, hack this ancient biological limit?
Well, according to Dunbar, not really. See, what social media is amazing at is giving us a huge quantity of connections, but it's not so great at quality. Digital ties are often pretty shallow, they're low maintenance, and the emotional bond just isn't that strong. Real, meaningful relationships, man, they take time, vulnerability, and a ton of emotional energy, and our brain just has a limited budget for that stuff.
Let me try and put this another way with a modern analogy.
Just think of your brain, which is this ancient piece of analog hardware, not as a supercomputer, but as something you carry in your pocket every single day.
Imagine your brain is a smartphone. Those really deep inner circle relationships, they're like high-power apps. They use a ton of processing power and drain your battery like crazy. You can only run a few of them at once. Then all your other connections are like apps running in the background, still sipping on your power. By the time you get to around 150 meaningful ties, you're pretty much hitting 1% on your social battery.
It all comes back to what Robin Dunbar himself said. The number of high-quality friendships we can maintain is limited by the size of our brains. It's not a judgment. It's not about being popular or unpopular. It's just a fundamental biological fact that shapes our entire social world.
So here's where we land. We're living in this world where our technology is promising us limitless connection, but we're walking around with brains that are very much limited. And that leaves us with a really important question. Knowing that your capacity for deep, meaningful connection is a finite and precious resource, how are you going to choose to invest it?